We read in this week's Parsha, portion of Vayeira, Vayeira Elov Hashem. And God appeared to him, Beilone Mamre, in the plains of Mamre. V'yoshiv Pescho Kechol Hayom, he's sitting at the entrance of the tent at the hottest time of the day. Over here, the Orach Chaim HaKodesh asks a question. Whenever Hashem appears to Avram, to anyone, the way usually the Torah expresses it says, Vayeira Hashem Elov. God appeared to him. The Torah says, Vayeira Elov Hashem. God to him appeared, meaning to him is prior to the name of God. So Vayeira Hashem Elov. It says Vayeira Elov Hashem. Why? So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says something profound. We find in Chazal, in the Midrash, that the Avos HaKadoshim, our holy patriarchs, they're referred to as the Merkava. They were the location of the divine presence in this world prior to the Mishkan. The Mishkan, Bosli Migdosh V'Shachanti B'Socham. So where was the presence of the divine presence? In the Holy of Holies, in the Kodesh Kadoshim. Prior to that, where was it? The Avos HaKadoshim, where the patriarchs were, that's exactly the location of the divine presence of Shekhinah. Although we know that Avram prophesied, but when did he achieve this level of holiness that he was worthy to be the location of the divine presence? So the Orach Chaim HaKodesh says, at this moment. Vayeira Hashem Elov means God appeared to him. I mean, he's there, God, it's a communication. Vayeira Elov Hashem, the Elov, he is the location of the revelation. He becomes that. And he says something interesting. Until this moment, whenever God appears to Avram, it says, Vayeira Hashem Elov. And then he speaks. God appeared to him and he speaks. After this moment, the Torah only says God spoke to Avram. There's no appearing any longer. Why doesn't he have to appear? The answer is he's always there. God's presence is always there. It's like Lahavdil, two people sit in the room. They're in one another's presence, and they communicate every once in a while. Where's Hashem's location, presence? Where Avram is. Vayeira Elov Hashem. When did that begin? At this moment. At this moment, Vayeira Elov Hashem. Now he became the Merkava. Therefore, beyond this point, there's no longer God appeared, it's only God spoke. This is the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. So it's interesting. We find that Sari Menu believed that the reason why she didn't bear a child was she wasn't worthy. She wasn't worthy to conceive. Therefore, initially she said, take my maidservant, hug her as a wife, and through her I will build. What does it mean, through her I will build? In her merit, I will have a child. What's the concept? She felt that there was some spiritual deficiency in herself. And why doesn't one recognize one's own spiritual deficiency? Because usually it's a lack of humility. But if a person is sufficiently humble, then we realize certain points that we glossed over. But if a person feels he's worthy, he's deserving, we don't see it as a failing. For a woman to give her slave, a maidservant, to be her peer, you know what level of negation this is in herself? It's a compromise on who you are. She felt it's only through that was she able to come to some semblance of clarity. And that itself, that humbling act, in that merit, she will have a child. But factually, it had nothing to do with her. As we see, when Sari Menu said to Avram to drive Hagar and her son from their home, so what does Hashem say to Avram? Whatever Sarah tells you, Shema B'Kolo. Listen, heed her voice. What is a voice? The voice of prophecy. So Chazal tell us that as a prophetess, Sari Menu was a greater prophetess than Avram was a prophet. So in terms of her own dimension of being, she was special. So why wasn't Avram able to have the child? So as we had read last week, until Avram was circumcised and he became Avraham, only then was he worthy of a child. It's interesting. We find that before he had the name change, from Avram to Avram, he fathered Yishmael. So how do we reconcile it? We had read at the end of last week's reading when Hashem said to Avram, your child will be a product of your loins. And he says he took him outside. And he says to look at the stars in the heaven. So Chazal tell us, he says, ignore your astrology. Avram was an expert astrologer. What did the zodiac say? The zodiac said, Avram ain't no ben. That's what he says to Hashem. Avram is not supposed to have a child. So Hashem, God says to Avram, it's true, Avram ain't no ben, Avraham yesh lo ben. Avraham, with the hay, will have a son. But if Avram ain't no ben, what about Yishmael? Yishmael was born, he fathered a child. So what does it mean, Avram ain't lo ben? He will not have a son. We find at the end of the portion of Bereshis, the Torah says that Lemech gave birth to a son, and he named him Noach. It's the first time it says Ben, Bain. So Rashi cites the Midrash. Why does it say Bain? Shu binyano shel olam. The world will be built through him. Bain comes from the word binyan. Hu binyano shel olam. Avram ein lo ben. As we said, God says to Avram, there will be 12 tribes, 12 princes, Nisim. So Rashi cites the Chazal, the Medrash. Nisim also clouds. Just as the clouds, they have no substance. When the wind comes, they're scattered. Identically, although you have multitudes of the progeny of Yishmael, they're all meaningless. They have no intrinsic value. They could be scattered. They have no value. So therefore, when we speak of Binyano Shel Olam, addressing the objective of creation, value, intrinsic value, Avram ein lo ben. You'll have a child, but that's not Binyano Shel Olam. Avram yesh lo ben. When Avram was supposed to have that child, he understood that child had to come from Sarah Imenu. It's not from Hagar, who's a maidservant, who's from an Egyptian. It's not from her. But he had a son. That's not Binyano Shel Olam. That's not the future of existence. Binyano, he says, Avram ein lo ben. Avram will not build this world. It's true, Avram will not. But Avram yesh lo ben. As Avram, you'll be the patriarch to father the future patriarch, ultimately to establish a Jewish people, which will be Yaakov. Yaakov being the third patriarch, he'll be the father of the 12 tribes. This is the meaning of the Chazal. So when was he qualified to father a child? For Sarah to conceive from him, you had to have that change within him. And what did that come about? It's only after he was circumcised. It came with the bris Kodesh. Avraham is numerically Ramach. 248. When, as Rashi cites Chazal, when did he take full control over every aspect of his being? Only once he was circumcised. That's when he became Avraham. He was Ramach. He was fully in control of every aspect of his being. Then, now you're qualified. So we explained last week, it's Avraham. Why the hay? So the Midrash tells us that Hashem said to Avraham, just as the hay was the basis for all existence to come about, the spirituality which lies in the hay brought about all existence, as it says. Because Hashem tzura lobim, the spirituality with the hay brought about all existence. For you to be able to father that son, you have to have the hay. Meaning the energy, the power, which brought about all existence, that same energy and power is needed to bring about the change within you to become the future patriarch of the Jewish people. So what we explained was that Avram is considered a new beginning of a new existence. Although as a physical being, he's part of humanity, but in terms of his intrinsic essence, he has no relevance to this existence. Avram yesh lo ben. He is Binyano Shel Olam. Which Olam? The olam that was meant to be built, the world that was meant to be built by Adam Arisha before the Chet. If Adam wouldn't sin, the world would have been a different world. The world could be spiritualized. The world has a capacity to receive God's presence. Adam failed. He ate of the tree of knowledge. He putrefied himself in existence. The world is not qualified to receive God's presence. What's the milah? What is the circumcision? The foreskin. What is the foreskin? What does the foreskin represent? So the Chaim HaKodesh explains in Parshas Tazria, he cites a Zohar, Adam was created without a foreskin, and he was a perfect person. When he ate of the tree of knowledge, which is Tov Ra, this is when he grew the foreskin. The foreskin is a representation of the evil that lies within that fruit. Because Avram Avinu was able to ascend to such spiritual heights, even with the impediment, with the spiritual impediment, God said, now you're ready to remove the foreskin, which is a representation of evil, to assume the position and the function of Adam before he ate of the tree of knowledge. You could bring heaven to earth. When did it culminate? Well, we received the Torah at Sinai. It says God brought heaven to earth. God's presence entered into this existence. Ultimately, how did it manifest itself? Make for me a sanctuary, I will dwell in your midst. So where's God's presence? God's presence is on earth, not in heaven. That's God's presence, to be with mankind. But which mankind? The medium to betocham means within us, within Klal Yisrael, within the Jewish people. Why within the Jewish people? Because we are the Adam. Atem kriyam Adam. You've assumed every aspect of the posture and profile who Adam was meant to be, which he forfeited that. Atem kriyam Adam, heim lo kriyam Adam. Therefore, if you're Adam, I was meant to have a relationship with that Adam. Therefore, I dwell in your midst. It's not the midst of the world. V'shachanti b'tocham, in your midst. Now, it's very interesting. There's a mitzvah saseh, there's a positive commandment of Kabbalah Somal Shemayim, to accept the unity of God, the yoke of heaven upon ourselves twice a day. In the evening, nighttime period, and we rise in the morning. In the Shema we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem, God is infinite. We accept He's the monotheistic being. Elokeinu, He's the Almighty, which is ours. It indicates there's a personal relationship. What do you mean, Elokeinu? He's Almighty for all existence, all mankind. So what do we refer to him as Elokeinu? But this quantification of a relationship, these are God's words. This is a verse in the Torah, there's a pasuk in the Torah. How does a Jew declare his belief? God says, you know how you declare your belief? And he says, repeat after me. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu. It's not us. We somehow took God for ourselves. God says, I am your God. But God's everybody's God. Idolatry is one of the 7 Noahide laws. Even the non-Jew has to be monotheistic. He's not permitted to be a pagan. So what's Elokeinu? With who does God have a relationship? With Adam. Adam. The world are not Adam. They forfeited that relationship. Of course he's their master. But in terms of the personal relationship, the personalization, Elokeinu, the intimacy, God said, I will be on the terrestrial level till we be with Adam. Who's Adam? Make for me the same, I will dwell in your midst. Because God only dwells in the midst of the Adam. If you're not Adam, you have no relationship. Is he your master? Of course he's your master. But you have no relationship. Therefore it's Elokeinu, and that possessiveness has no relevance to the nations of the world for that reason. So when does Avram become the Merkava? When does he become the location of the Shekhinah? The 3rd day after his circumcision. This is the most difficult day. Vayeira Elav Hashem. Now that you've circumcised yourself, now that you've detached yourself, that there's no trace of the sin of Adam, This is a reinstatement. Now that you've been reinstated through Milah, and now that you have the capability of fathering the Ben to be the founding father of mankind of Adam. Now, Avram, now you're qualified to build a world. To address the objective of creation is to produce a nation, which is who? Who is this nation? They have Binyanu Shalom. They will meet the objective of this existence. And that's why Klal Yisrael, if we would have rejected the Torah at Sinai, the world would have reverted back to pre-creation. Why us? Give it to another nation. They all also rejected it, but it was offered to them first. That was only offered to them, as the Gemara says, because if he wouldn't have, they said, why don't you offer it to us? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Histin Ma'aseh Bereishis, Yom HaShishi. God says it's all contingent on that 6th day of Sivan. Im Yekablu Torah Mutav. If they receive the Torah, will be good. If not, the world reverts back to pre-creation. Why? Because the world was created for Adam. Now, how does Adam function within the capacity to address all his aspects of spirituality, growth, and development? It's only through the Torah. But if you reject the Torah, so how do you develop? How do you actualize all the aspects of Adam? If that's the case, it can't be. It has to revert back to pre-creation. We said Nasa v'nishma. We accept it unequivocally. God says, now God, what does God do? God comes from heaven to earth. He brings Shemaim La'oretz. We sinned with the Chet Egel. It diminished our relationship, but it didn't terminate it. We were still Adam. Now, what is a compensation for Sinai? Make for me the sanctuary. It's not quite Sinai. It's interesting, the Ramban, Nachmanides, he shows that there's a correlation between Sinai and the Mishkan. All aspects of Sinai are represented in the Mishkan. There's a correlation. Why? Because factually, the Mishkan is Sinai. What was the intent of creation? That God should have a relationship with Adam. Initially, the relation was meant to be direct. At Sinai, when we said Nasa Nisham, we became the ultimate Adam. Now we're ready to develop and evolve as the fully developed Adam with the full capacity. Eternal person. But what happened? We failed with the Egel, with idolatry. We had a setback. But what was the setback? The setback wasn't that God has no relevance to. We're still Adam. So how does he have a relationship? We're not worthy of that relationship. It has to come through a medium. What's the medium? Mishkan. But what is the medium of Mishkan? It has to reflect all aspects of what Sinai was meant to be. That God dwells on the terrestrial level in all aspects. There's the fire. There is the enclosure. Encircle the mountain. You have the vertical beams encircling the location. Everything is replicated on a smaller scale in the Mishkan, because the Mishkan is the location, which is the equivalent of Sinai. But it's the same idea, because we didn't forfeit our posture, our classification as Adam for that reason. Okay? An interesting midrash. We find at the beginning of creation, God says to the Malachim, to the angel, Nasa Odom b'tzalmeinu v'nusenu. Let us make man in our image and our form. What did the angel say? Ma'enish kisis kareno. It's a verse in Tehillim. Enosh, which is the unformed man, incomplete man, deficient man, he's not even worth mentioning. Uven Odom, and even if he's more developed, Kisav Kedenu, Is he worthwhile even acknowledging? Man is prone to fail. You mean you're creating this universe for man to address potential? He has no relevance to it. Let your splendor be in heaven. Give the Torah to the angels. Man is so fickle and so incapable, he has no relevance to it. Ma'enosh kisis kerenu, uven odam kisif kedenu. That's what the Malachim said to God. Tanohodcha l'shamayim. Just as a little bit of a backdrop. The Torah tells us in regard to the most difficult test, which was the Akedah, the Torah says, Vayi achar advar me'elo, v'elokim nisas Avram. After these words, we'll see, or event, God tested Avram. Madvarm hoyusham. What words were there? Evidently, there was some kind of words passed. The words stated, Shahoy Yishmael Omer Yitzchok. Yishmael, who was the brother, paternally, they shared the same father. Shmo says to Yitzchak, Ani Godel Mimcha. You think you're so special. You think you're so holy. You think you have such a special pedigree. I'm greater than you are. Why? Sheni Malti ben Shloshes Rishona. So Valti is Atzar. I was circumcised. I was 13 years old. I was an adult. I endured the pain. Vato, and you, Malta ben Shmonas Yomim, years old. You had no sense of pain. You had no sense of pain. Even if your father would have slaughtered you at that age, you wouldn't have known the difference. Lo yisi odea. So you think you're so great. Do you know what I endured for God? I'm greater than you are. If you would have been 13 and you would have been offered to be circumcised, you wouldn't have allowed yourself to be circumcised. I allowed myself to be circumcised. I was willing to endure the pain for God. You wouldn't have been able to. Amalo Yitzchak. Ain't Zedam, what you're saying is not true. If God at this moment would say to my father, slaughter your son Yitzchak, I will allow myself to be slaughtered. Yitzchak this time was 37 years old. I would allow. You're saying, if you at 8, if your father would have slaughtered you, you wouldn't know the difference. I was 13. I allowed myself to be circumcised. You wouldn't have allowed yourself. You wouldn't have endured the pain. Yitzchak says, if God would say to my father, bring your son Yitzchak and slaughter him, at this moment, I would not interfere. I would allow myself to be slaughtered, which is greater than enduring the pain of circumcision. Immediately, it was activated. Shenemar. After this dialogue between Yishmael and Yitzchak took place, now God is ready to test Avram. Now let's stop for a moment. Seemingly it's difficult. If God wanted to test Avram, what did have to be predicated on this dialogue between Yishmael and Yitzchak? Evidently it had to. Because it says, after Yitzchak had made a statement, God says, now I'm ready to test. Now I'm ready to test Avram with the Akedah. You see something very interesting. The question is, we speak about Akedah Yitzchak. It's the test of Avram. Why isn't it a test for Yitzchak? Yitzchak was 37 years old. He totally submitted, and even on the Mizbeach, on the altar, he says to his father, I want you to bind me. Because I don't want to flinch. I want to be held secure. I want there should be a valid slaughtering. And he's the sacrifice. What about if he wouldn't have agreed? Avraham, Yitzchak was an adult. So how could God impose test Avraham unless Yitzchak was agreeable to be slaughtered? So the test only came into being only after this dialogue. After Yitzchak says, you know something? If God would say to my father, Shchot bincha Yitzchak, I would immediately acquiesce, submit without a question, and endure whatever that pain is for the sake of God. So if that's the case, there's no obstacles any longer. Now I'm ready to test. Now I'm ready to test Avram. K'shebikesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu livros ha'olam, when God wanted to create the world, Amru Malachei Ashoris, and they understood what is the purpose of creation for man. So they said to God, Ma enosh kisis karenu. What is man? He's not even worth mentioning. Omar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Atem Omrim Ma enosh kisis karenu. You're saying Enosh is always the deficient man. Why are you saying, why is Enosh not worth mentioning? Enosh was the person who introduced idolatry to humanity. Because to the generation of Enosh, they were all idolaters. El Hareini Mara Lochem Kvodo Shel Avram Kisis Karenu. You see he's worth mentioning. Enosh is not worth mentioning, but you realize there's an individual who's called Avram, he's worth mentioning. Shenemar. Vayiskar Elokim es Avram. It says he remembered Avram. Atem Omru ben Odom Kisif Kedenu. And that just said is man, even if he's more developed, is he even worth acknowledging? He's worth acknowledging. Why? Hashem pokad Sorah. Hashem considered, acknowledged Sorah that she should conceive. When is this? This is after the name change. This is all after he was Avraham. Vayiskar Elokim es Avraham. Omalem. Asidim atem liros of sheshochet is beno. What you said is baseless. Is it worthwhile? It's fickle. There's no value. Has tremendous value. Because you don't understand. Asidim atem liros of sheshochet is aben. Ultimately, you will see a father slaughtering his son. Vaben nishchar al kedusha shemi. A father is agreeable to slaughter his son without question. And the son will submit to sanctify my name by giving his life. Okay? This is God's response to the angels. It's not worthwhile. He's prone to fail. He's fickle. He's unformed. He's spiritually deficient. He has no capacity. You're mistaken. You're drawing from Enosh. All idolaters, pagans. Is Avram. He's not Enosh. And he's not the Ben Odom Kisif Gedenu. This is the Odom. This is the Odom. You don't understand. There's an Odom. The original Odom failed. And because he failed, there's an Enosh. And this generation of the great flood. There's a generation of the dispersion. This is a different being. Here's the question. We find that Yishmael, it says, Sori Menu, she saw Yishmael was mitzachik. He was acting frivolously. It's a question. With certain indications had to do with idolatry, with murder, with adultery. There were certain indicators. He was still a tzaddik. She goes to Avram, her husband, which is we have to drive the mother and the child from the house. Because he's going to undermine the development of Yitzchak. He has to be driven. That's what he says. They're driven from the house. He gives them a flask of water there, and they're confronted. Ishmael's dying of thirst. And they start praying. Vayishma Hashem es kol anar, ba'asher hu sham. It says God heard the voice, the tefillah of the nar, of the lad, ba'asher hu sham, because of his present predicament. So Rashi cites Chazal that when he was praying for the miracle that she be saved, the angels come before Hashem and say to Hashem, let him die of thirst. Why? Why should he die of thirst? Because after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, the Jews are going to go into exile. And they're going to ask of their captors, the Babylonians, let us visit our cousins, the Ishmaelim. And they'll give us something to eat, something to drink, and somehow they'll quench our thirst. So what did they do, the Arabs? So it says in the Midrash, they gave them salty herring, so they were parched, so they were thirsty. And then they gave them skins filled with air, stale air, which they thought was filled with water. So when they were so parched and they inhaled the stale air, they all died. So the angels say to God, let this man survive. Look what his progeny in the future, what they're going to do to your children. Let him die. So I asked the question, simple question. But the angels saw something that happened in the future. That the Arabs, the descendants of Yishmael, will cause thousands and thousands to die in exile, on their way to exile. But if Yishmael dies now, there are no descendants. So how could they see something in the future and they're requesting he should die now? If he dies now, there is no future. So what exactly are they asking? So if it's an after-fact event. Hashem says, is he tzaddik now or is he Rasha? They said he's a tzaddik and he will. But their request was, don't let him live. Don't perform the miracle on his behalf. Let him perish. Let him die of thirst. There should not be a future. If there's no future, there are no Arabs misleading the Jews, causing them to die. So how do we reconcile both events? So what's said, the way it's explained, a malach, an angel, is able to evaluate the present and extrapolate into the future, understanding the makeup of the present in so many generations. This is going to be the end result. This is going to be the nature of the people. And the interaction is going to be that. It didn't happen. But if you play it out and you allow this man's descendants to evolve and to propagate and be in that location, when the Jews will be passing by their area, this is what they're going to do. Because that lies already within Yishmael. That's the kind of progeny he's going to produce. So if that's the case, end it now. So they were able to see in the present the future, but not its reality. So let's prevent that from happening. So the question is, originally the Malachim said, Ma enish kisis karenu, uven odom kisif gedenu. Let them see Odom now. And just as they were able to evaluate Yishmael, to see all the events evolving, to understand what kind of progeny we'll have and what they're going to do to the Jews, to Klal Yisrael, they should see Odom. There's going to be an Avram Avinu. There's going to be a Yitzchok. There's going to be a sanctification of God's name. There's going to be an Am Segula. There's going to be a nation which is God's treasure. Why weren't they able to extrapolate? By seeing Odom, this is contained with Odom. So I was thinking, they weren't able to see it. Why weren't they able to see it? Because Avram is Avraham. He's not part of that existence. So what you see now, you cannot see into the future. You can't see that. Because he does not lie. Avram is a different creation. They're looking at one creation, Avram is a different creation. When they had said, Ma enish kisis karenu, that's the present creation. That's not Avram's creation. That's not his existence. They saw a physical being, but Avram's not the physical being. There was a transformation, there was a metamorphosis. His essence didn't exist. That's Avram. Avraham yesh lo ben. When God said, the binyan ha'olam, the world that what I meant to address, that doesn't exist now. That will come into existence. So they couldn't draw and extrapolate from the present into that. Therefore, they had a valid point. What we see, my enish kisis karenu, the deficient man is not worth mentioning. Uven odom kisif gedenu, Hashem says no. Vayiskar lamkit es Avraham. Vayifkur es Sorah. When did he acknowledge Sorah to be able to conceive? After he became Avraham. Now, she's able to conceive. That's something the angels had no idea. He's shochet es aben. He doesn't say beno. Es aben. He was willing to slaughter his child, although that's the future. And I explained to him this is the future. Avram did not ask questions. Shochet es aben va'aben. And the son who understands what his future is, Nishcha Kedusha Shemi. He's willing to give it all up to sanctify my name. This is the dimension of these people. Is it worthwhile to create the world for these people? These people are a different dimension. They're a different dimension of being. That's what Klal Yisrael is. It's interesting. The Medrash cites a pasuk, Vayeira Elav Hashem. You're going to get the portion. Rav Yitzchok Nafcha Posach. Rav Yitzchok Nafcha, when he began his lecture, he began with this pasuk. Mizbach Adoma Tasali. Build for me an altar made of earth. The end of the portion of Yisrael. V'omer, B'chol Mokom Asher Aske Shmi, wherever my name will be mentioned, Ovu Elecha V'rachticha. I will come to you and I will bless you. Omer HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Uma Misho Yozavech Olo Shlomim. A person who brings a burnt offering or a peace offering, Ani Nigla Ola Levorcho. What's a bracha? It says, Ovu Elecha V'rachticha. I will come to you and I will bless you. That means the divine presence is coming to bless you. And who merits this? Where's Aske Shmi, where the altar is built? I will come there and I will bless you for bringing the korban, the sacrifice, the burnt offering, the peace offering. The one who slaughters the burnt offering or the peace offering. I reveal myself to him to bless him. Avram who sacrificed himself before me. Allah's kam definitely. Now, where did he sacrifice himself? Where did he sacrifice himself? Referring to the circumcision. He had the ability, the strength. The blood was dripping. The Milo. But that was what was the sacrifice? What was the sacrifice? There was blood. Just want to say another midrash. Reb Yitzchok, Nemar Bamilo Avoda. Regarding circumcision, you find the term avoda, service. V'nemar Bakarbonos Avoda. And it says in regard to bringing sacrifices, avoda, service. Ma avoda hamora Bakarbonos domim. Just as when you bring the sacrifice, the essence of sacrifice is the blood, as the Talmud tells us, the Gemara tells us, Ein kapor el bedam, atonement comes through the sprinkling of the blood. Avavoda hamura b'milo domim. So what is the avoda which has relevance to circumcision? It's blood. There's blood involved. Loma zeri avdenu. Kevon she'odam matif tip acha shel dam. When the person causes even one droplet of blood, it's beloved to Hashem as the sacrifices. Shenemar, v'shovai l'shlom nizbach keyom nira Hashem aleichem. So therefore, God values the droplet of blood of the circumcision like the blood of karbonos. Chaviva, it's beloved to Him. We read in regard to the Klal Yisrael, before we left Egypt, we were given two mitzvos, Dam Mila and Dam Pesach. It doesn't say Milo and Pesach. The blood of Mila and the blood of Pesach. What is the blood? What does the blood represent? It's the blood. What is blood? Kidam hu nefesh. The blood is the life source of every living creature. That's why a Jew on Shabbos, if you let blood, it's a Torah violation. It's called the Tilas Neshama. It's the equivalent of slaughtering. The Mishkan, they slaughtered for the hides. To have hides, they needed hides. Even taking out a droplet of blood, that's Damu HaNefesh. The life source of every living creature lies in the blood. That's extracting blood. So if circumcision is synonymous with blood, Mosa Nafsho, that's Avoda. The blood represents, but what is it really? Blood, it's a droplet of blood. It means nothing. It's meaningless. So I was thinking, my Rosh Yeshiva many years ago said, Zeichet Tzaddik Livrocha, that there's a mitzvah, a positive commandment, that a person has a male firstborn that opens the womb of his mother. There's a mitzvah, pidyon haben, redemption of the firstborn. You give 5 silver coins to the Kohen. That's the redemption. Pidyon haben. So the ritual that takes place, besides giving the money, is a dialogue between the Kohen and the father. And the Kohen says to the father, what would you prefer? Would you prefer your child, or would you prefer the 5 silver coins? What would you prefer? Do you want your child or the money? Father says, I prefer my child, you take the money. So Marashiva, Zechat Tzaddik Baruch asked, what kind of absurd question is this? You're going to give away your child for 5 silver coins. What would you prefer? To retain the money and I'll take the child? Or you retain the child and you give me the silver coins? What exactly is being communicated between the Kohen and the father of the child? So what he said was, when we speak of the 5 silver coins, it's purely symbolic. What would you prefer? Would you prefer the material? And many people, they compromise their spirituality because they're not willing to give up the material. Person has to educate his child Jewishly. Needs a Torah education. It's not free education. It's costly. There are many other things. To live as a Jew, there's a material cost factor. That means you have to compromise on the material for the spiritual. You have to sacrifice for the spiritual. So the Kohen is saying to the father of the child, what is your priority? What's premium to you? Your child, the spirituality, or is it the money? What exactly would you prefer? He says, I prefer my child. Because what is a Jewish child? That's a spirituality. That's the essence of every Jew. That's exactly the dialogue. When a person circumcises himself, as we said, what does this foreskin represent? The evil of mankind. Lust, desire, hedonism. That's the representation of the foreskin. So, in this world, it's something which is pleasurable. It's enjoyable. But it's a moment. What would you prefer? Would you prefer to give that up? Or would you prefer the momentary pleasure? When Avram circumcised himself, he was Mosa Nafsho. He gave his life. The life, nefesh, is always the physicality. He gave his life for God. I'm willing to cut it away. He entered into a covenant. What did it represent, the Milah? It's Bris Choshech Samtim B'V'Sarenu. It's the sign engraved in our flesh. We are God's servants. Milah is God's servants. That's what it is. I'm willing to give it all away for you. The Jew dies for God. This is B'chol Nafshecha. Therefore, God says, when Avram circumcised himself, it's like the korban, it's like the avoda. The person says he understands, I should really be slaughtered in place of the animal. God is willing to take the animal in my place. The blood should be my blood. God is accepting, that's avoda. So when you give your own blood, but what's the blood? It's not the droplet of blood. The droplet of blood as a result of circumcision represents what you're giving away. You'd be a different person. That person has no relevance to spirituality. That person is the pre-Adam person, or post-Adam. He's no longer Adam. We only are called Adam after the circumcision. That's post-circumcision. Atem kriyim Adam. You no longer have the handicap, which came about because of Adam's failing of eating of the tree of knowledge. This is the understanding. So that's what he says. If you bring an ola and a zebach and a shlomim and yinigla all of the vorcho, Avraham shezavach atzmo lefonai, he cut himself. But what's the zvicha? Allah's kamu kamu. The Talmud, based on psukim, says a person has to be zoveach yitzro. You have to slaughter your inclination. You slaughter it. That's what it is. Life is an uphill battle. 24/7, 70 years minimally. It's a 24-hour battle. He doesn't rest. He doesn't cease for a moment. Always strategizing how to ensnare us. person has to continuously in an intolerant mode. You can't give him an iota of movement. Because the moment you do, then you fall victim to what he is. That's avoda. But where does it begin? It begins with the circumcision. That's where it begins. With this, maybe we're able to understand. The Gemara tells us, Midrash tells us, that of the hospitality scrutinized and evaluated, and it has eternal ramifications. Because he said to the angels, Hishanu tachas ha'etz, rest under the shade of my tree. We merited for 40 years the Ani HaKavod, clouds of glory which protected us from all the elements, many other benefits. Ultimately, after the 40 year in the desert, we merited the mitzvah of Sukkah, because the Sukkah is an extension of the clouds of glory. Mitzvah of Sukkah. Because he offered his bread, Ekcha pas lechem, the man, miracle food. Lo nitl Torah el ochle aman. There was a certain spirituality which gave us an understanding to be able to fully absorb. We were detached from physicality. We lived as spiritual beings in the desert, to be able to fully absorb the Torah and all the mitzvahs that we did, to be fully spiritualized before we went back to a physical setting, which is Eretz Yisrael. And then he offered him water. Yukach no mat mayim. We merited Bereshel Miriam, which is also something, which is miraculous water, because of the hospitality. Avram is 99 years old. Avram, all his life, was involved in hospitality, disseminating, espousing monotheism. Why all of a sudden now does the Torah go and evaluate every aspect of the chesed that he does, the kindness that he does? What he did himself, the Jews will get directly themselves. What he did through an intermediary, it will come about through intermediary. The water was given through an intermediary, therefore Moshe had to strike the rock. The bread, which he directly gave, it came direct. The shade which he directly offered, it came about by itself. Now it's interesting, very interesting. What does his direct have to do with God's direct? And what he did came through an intermediary. It was Avram. Avram is the Merkava. Avram is the Shekhinah. When he bread, they were offering the bread. God was with him. That's God. God was involved in that act of offering the bread. When he offered the shade of his tree, that was God himself involved, together with him. When he delegated the water, that water, God was not involved in offering that water. If that's because later, years later, when the Jews are going to be in need of water in the desert, it has to come through an intermediary, because God was not involved in that. Whatever God was involved in, I will be involved in. What he was, then it's through an intermediary. That's the understanding. Before this moment, he wasn't in Merkava yet. It was much lesser. It was a lesser dimension. Fighting and overwhelming. The Torah tells us, so the word Yoshev is written with the Vav deleted. So without the vowels, we read Yoshav. So Rashi cites the Midrash. Because God came to him, he wanted to stand to acknowledge him. Shave, you sit. Ani emot, and I will stand when you're sitting. When a court will convene, I will convene with the court. They will convene sitting, and I will stand there. Shenemar, a verse in Tehillim, Elokim nitza badas kel. God. Why? When you sit, I will stand. In judgment. Now, a court could render all kinds of decisions. Death penalty, penalties, financial decisions, all kinds of verdicts. How could you be so certain that the man is guilty? How? There's always an element of human error. Maybe you take an innocent life. The answer is no. Elokim nitzav b'das kel. If the judges, the court meets all the criteria of what a proper court is, God is associated with that court. The judges process it through God's eyes. Verdict is absolute truth. Therefore, the man deserves to be put to death. He deserves the penalty to pay whatever he has to pay. Institution, whatever it may be. El Kim nitzav b'das kel. What is this all about? What exactly is the present now have to do with the future of a court system? In the portion of Mishpatim, we find that a judge qualified to render even a monetary decision, he has to be a person who was ordained with the ordination of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's referred to as a somuch. The judges in the Torah are referred to as Elohim. Elohim. Though Elohim. But the judge is also referred to as that. So the Sephardo explains over there why is he referred to that? That because the judge has this level of connection to Elohim, therefore he's called Elohim. The judge. So what is the judge? God is there. Meaning, what Avram was in terms of the Merkava, that's what a Bezdin is, a court, a rabbinic court when they convene. A qualified court, they're the Merkava. When they're ready to make the decision, Elokim needs. God quickly in our days. What's the language? Where's God? Come upon. You have to have a level of clarity removed. You have a great grasp. When you have that level of clarity, when you're attached to the source. When we have a Beis Hamikdash, we have the temple, where God's presence, the Baishi, the third temple, which is a whole. Of course, when the light shines, about das care, the judge doesn't care, and because God needs of that scale. But what is it? Just that Vayeira Hashem. And it says, Yoshav. BK Shlamod. You are an indication for the future. As I, together, my presence is with you, I will be in the future. But it's interesting. What is the context of Yoshav Kechom Hayom? So Rashi says that because he was convalescing, it was the third day after his circumcision, God wanted him to have some respite from hospitality. So what did he do? He He took the sun out of its sheath. That he shouldn't be guests. He was pained that there were no wayfarers coming. So he brought angels in human form. You understand? Mitzvahs, I have a whole cupboard filled with food. I don't know what to do with it. That was the pain of Avraham Avinu. So he said, you know something? If they're here, I give. I host people. They're not here, I don't host them. He wanted to give some respite that he should not be pained. The pain of being the guest was more painful than dealing with the guests. But what was the pain? You know what he's mitzdayer? Every guest who entered Avram's tent entered a pagan, left a monotheist. Never failed in his dialogue. So what does that mean? Every moment a person doesn't come, there's a pagan living in this world believing the world is somebody else's other than God's. That means the Chil Hashem is unceasing. So what was the pain? The pain was God's glory. It was pain for Hashem. God says, if you're pained to such a degree, you're my location. You're my address. This Vayeira Elof. Where did he appear to him? He's Yoshe Pesach Chom. In the state of his pain, God says, you're my address. So just, and he says, address because you're pained. If you have a proper court wanting to render a decision of truth, and why truth? Because God's truth, I will stand together with them to guarantee that they will be able to disseminate and establish a truthful justice.